Hey everyone, this should be a simple one-shot video because where some of the videos I do, some of the series are about making an entire type of database, this video is just about one field within a database, and that is specifically a customizable auto-numbering field. You would use fields like this for, say, a case management system, where every time a new case is created, that you would want a ticket number to be generated, and you wouldn't want the individual users to have to make one on their own. You want the ticket to be auto-generated. Or perhaps some kind of transactional database that every time you receive goods, you want a number to be auto-generated. Now, Access comes with an auto-generating number field, but it really isn't customizable. Maybe you have certain criteria. You want it to be 5 digits long. Well, can't do that with the pre-existing one. It starts off at 1, goes to 2, goes to 3, so on and so forth. So there's a few tweaks you can make to it, but it's better off just to start from scratch because then you can make it be exactly what you want it to be. So building on that idea, for a lot of any kind of case management system, usually the numbers are simply sequential. And so there's no actual meaning to the number. What I'm suggesting here is that if you're going to have a unique identifier number for a transaction, such as receiving, or for a case management system, why not have an auto numbering scheme that makes sense? So have a scheme that actually gives you information just by looking at the number. Like, for instance, using the pre-existing auto numbering field, a ticket might be 175. Well, what does 175 tell you? Other than that it's supposedly the 175th ticket, that number doesn't mean anything. But say you have an auto numbering system that's based on date. And so a ticket is taken today, and so maybe that ticket number would be something like 181027. Well, just by looking at that ticket number, you now know the year, month, and day that that ticket was filled out. So yes, you could have a so-called simple auto numbering system like Access uses, but again, it's a number that doesn't have any deeper meaning. Larger corporations, they can add all kinds of fields that do timestamps and things like that, but particularly for smaller businesses, you need information to be extremely concise. And so just by looking at that auto-generated number, you already have information about that. And then you can add other things too, such as maybe add the initials of the person who has entered that case or received that delivery. And so suddenly you have this unique identifier that actually means something to you just by looking at it. So that's what we're going to do. So let's start by going up to Create, and we're going to click on Table. And when you create a new table, it adds one field, and this is the auto number that I was talking about. So when you create this, it automatically pushes you to the Fields tab. Click on View. Right now, by default, you're looking at Datasheet View. If it helps, if you're not really familiar with databases, Datasheet is similar to spreadsheets. There are definitely differences, but once you start adding columns and rows, a datasheet looks a lot like a spreadsheet. So if you're new to databases and it helps, think datasheet, spreadsheet. They're not identical, but close enough to get you started. Anyway, so we don't want datasheet view. That is when you do actual data entry. We want to do design view. Wants us to save it. And so you can name this whatever you want. I'm going to call this, let's just call this case, and then underscore TBL. We do OK. We're going to get rid of the primary key. Primary keys themselves are our entire discussion. So for now, we're just not going to worry about it because I want to focus on the data type. So as I said, there's an auto number field. And if you look down here, there are a very few things you can change. Like, for instance, rather have it be an increment, you could have it be randomized. In some ways, that's even worse. Why would you want randomization? Maybe because if someone knows how a numbering system works, it gives them the ability to make up a number, things like that. So there could possibly be security reasons, but again, the kind of lessons that I do are very much for internal use only. They're not meant to be for high security usages. These are more like small businesses, internal usage, not client facing, anything like that. So systems that you're not worried about fraud. Okay, so we don't want it to be auto numbered. So the first thing we do is we're going to click on the data type, and we're going to change that to short text, because even though it's going to store numbers, it's going to be treated like a text field. Think of like a phone number. Yes, it's technically numbers, but you're not using them as numbers. You're really using them as a string. You're using them as text. Same thing for like a social security number, an account number. They may contain numbers, but you're not trying to manipulate the numbers. You're not going to do arithmetic with those numbers. And we'll just modify this name. We'll call this case underscore ID. And yes, I use underscores. I get asked about that all the time. It's considered a best practice. In short, you can get away with having a space, but sometimes when you get in, if you have to do VB coding, Visual Basic coding, and you're adding modules, that space can cause a coding issue. So suffice to say, it's a best practice to not use spaces in the names of fields. Let's just leave it at that. It's a whole big discussion, but it's a best practice, and it's really not that hard on the eyes to see an underscore. But that's why I don't use spaces. So we now have a field called case ID. So let's go back to view, and we're going to go back to datasheet view. It's going to ask us to, well, it's going to say we have to save it, not just ask. Now, I just want to point this out. If you're new to databases, when you enter a value into a field, so if I was to enter a case number here, and then I close the table, it's not going to ask me to save the table, because as soon as you enter a value and you move to another field, that's it. You've saved that value. The only reason why I was prompted to save the table is because I changed the table itself. So if you're changing the structure of the table, you're prompted to save. If you're putting a value into a field, that's it. It's already saved. That's the nature of a database. It's capturing that data. High fault tolerance. Okay, so we have a table and we have a case ID. So now we want to start populating that case ID. So let's go ahead and close this. We're going to use a form because very often you're not going to be doing manual data entry into a table. So in a spreadsheet, you would. So this is one of the ways that tables differentiate from spreadsheets. So in a spreadsheet, typically you do just tab around and enter values. You really don't want to do that with a table. With a table, you want to make a simplified user interface, particularly if the DBA isn't the one who's doing the data entry, that it's another end user. You want to simplify and streamline that process. So you're going to want to create a form. So we go to create, go to blank form. And what we're going to do is see these navigation tools. We're going to shut these off. It wouldn't really make that big of a difference in this demonstration, but I find it to be a best practice to shut these off because you don't want people to navigate a database other than exactly how you want them to. So, could be a security issue, could just mess up the way the database works. So you really don't want to give people navigation tools that you don't intend them to use. So we'll go to View, Design View. Be very careful what is selected. Right here, the form is selected. That's what that little dot means. So that means that I'm going to look at the properties of this. So I'm going to click on Design, and I click on Properties. And these are the properties of specifically the form. The reason why I'm saying that is when we start adding objects to the form, if I have an object selected, those properties are specific to just that one selected object. Okay, so we're going to shut off, we said, those navigation buttons. So we have record selectors, navigation buttons, and I usually make the border style fixed or narrow or thin. We can leave it as sizable, but just keep in mind if layout is important, you might be creating dead space and stuff if you let them stretch or even shrink the form. But we'll just do it since I took the time to say it. So I'll usually make it thin or none. But again, if you let them control the size of the form, could cause problems. So you really want to lock down what they can do with the database. Okay. So now what we're going to do is now that we've shut off the controls, again, we're controlling the form itself here. We're looking at the properties of the form itself. We're going to go to Data. Data entry, yes, because we're going to be adding new records. Record source. So what will this form be pointing at? What will we be looking at for data? Well, we're going to click here, and sure enough, there's our table. If we had 100 tables, they'd all be listed. All right, so we now have the form linked to that table. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to bring that one field over. So up here, again, we're on the Design tab. We're going to go from Properties Sheet to Add Existing Fields, and sure enough, there's Case ID. It's there because we linked the form to the table. So we're going to take that, drag and drop it, and put it near the top. This here is actually a label, and this here is the field. Makes a difference, again, depending on what you have selected. If you want to, like, say, position this above it, you just left-click on the upper left corner and drag over. If you want to move them together, you can just click on any border and move them. Okay, so we now have our Case ID field. For the time being, we're going to leave it as being editable, but you generally don't want them. You don't want the end user to be able to modify this because, as we're saying, we want to auto-generate. So we'll eventually lock this field down. To make it simple, we're just going to add a button that when we click the button, the field is generated, the value for the field is generated, and it closes the form. So we'll select button, left click, drag, standard's kind of Windows warning, and we're going to cancel out. We don't want to use the wizard. We're going to do this manually via a VB script, a Visual Basic script. And again, I'm not too concerned about layout, but if you want the practice, it's left click and you can move it around. In this case, since it's one object rather than two linked, it's just one object. In this case, doesn't matter if you grab the border. All right, you can click here and change the name. Actually, let me rephrase that. The object's name, so we're going to select the object, we'll go back up to property, and now we're looking at the properties of the button, not the form. Okay. Its name is still command 1. So if, say, I'm trying to do something with command 1, I still have to reference command 1. What I changed was the caption. So there is a difference. There's the caption for what is displayed to the end user, but then there's the name of the object. So this you can change as well. We'll keep it as command 1 though, because it lets us know that it's a button, because command is a button in Access speak. All right, so with our button clicked, we're going to click on Event now. As you can see, there's a variety of events. I won't go through all of them, but we're going to use onClick. So when you click on the ellipsis, the 3 dots, it gives you selections. Do you want a macro? Do you want expression or code? We're going to go right into the text editing. We're going to do code. As you can see, it's telling you command 1 because that's the name of the object, and it's when you click. add in a few spaces. All right, so the first thing we're going to do, we're going to do two things. One, we need to generate a value and put it into that field. Two, we need to close the form. So when an object is on a form and you have a script connected to that form, you can reference anything on that form by using me. So you're saying you're referencing the object, the overall object in this case, that the script is attached to. So me dot sorry, I was forgetting the name. It's case ID. So there is the object that we put into the form, at least one of them. So we'll click on that. So we're saying the case ID object on this form, we're going to do something with it. We're going to set it equal to something. So what we said is we wanted to have an auto numbering system based at least first on date. Date has multiple fields and you don't want all of them, and you may want to have it formatted a certain way. Like, do you want 4-digit date? That was a big deal 20 years ago for Y2K. So for now, we'll just use last 2 digits. There are built-in functions to capture things such as date and time. So you have a time and date stamp, but like I said, we need to modify the format. So that's what we type. Format. Well, we have to say what we're formatting. We're formatting the date. Comma. Well, what's the formatting? Put in a quote. And the format will be year, year, month, month, day, day. So extract 2-digit year, 2-digit month, and 2-digit day. One of the reasons why you do month, month rather than just month and day, day instead of day is what I was saying at the beginning of the video about having a consistent length of field, because for whatever reason you might need it. Maybe you put in some kind of check to do data validation to make sure that it's a valid number. Whatever happens, it's good to have that consistent length. So it's not just random. I actually want this to consistently have 6 digits. That way, January doesn't come through as 1, January comes through as 01. January 1st doesn't come through as 11, it comes through as 0101. That kind of thing. So you have a consistent length. And then, like I said, the second thing is we want the form to close. So we'll just do command close. VB, you don't need to put anything at the end of the line. If you're familiar with C#, a lot of C# lines have like a semicolon. At least when in the game platform Unity, it requires a semicolon when you're using a C# script. So we'll go ahead and save that. It wants us to save the form, and we'll call this new underscore case. And you can, well, if we're going to be consistent, let's put FRM at the end. Since we did TBL for a table, we'll do FRM for a case. We'll do OK. And now we'll close this. And now we'll go back. On View, we'll go to Form View. Actually, I'm going to save one more time just to be safe. Every once in a while, I'll do that. I will edit a script, so a VB script, and I notice it doesn't work. When I go back, it's gone. So I'm not sure if it's a glitch in Access or if it's a procedural error. Procedural error meaning user error, and the user, in this case, would be me. So we'll click on View. So what's going to happen is when I hit Save and Close, now obviously for an actual case, you would have, say someone called, okay, who called? You'd have a description, what did they do, what's the nature of the problem, what's the ETA for completion, things like that. So I don't want to confuse you and not have anything else here, but like I said, I really am just trying to focus on the construction of this field, and then you can integrate that into your database. So we're going to click Save and Close. And you could see very briefly the number appeared there. So let's open our table, and what do we got? We have 18, 10, 27. So the year, the month, and the day. So if I was to run this tomorrow, it would be 18, 10, 28. Next day, 18, 10, 29, so on and so forth. So we're close, but we're not exactly where we need to be. Because if I was to take 10 cases in the same day, we would get the same number 10 times. So no good. Well, not no good, but we haven't drilled down far enough. So let's close the table. Go back to our form, View, Design. Click on a button. Make sure you're not still selected here. Make sure you click on your button, ellipsis. We're going to add to this. Now, in some languages, you use the ampersand when you are going to do what's known as concatenate. Concatenate is when you take two or more fields and you combine them into one longer field. So say you have a first name field, Jane, last name field, Doe, but you need to put them together for, say, a labeling. You need to put it for like an address, and you want to concatenate. You want to combine that into a single field, Jane Doe, that kind of thing. So that's what concatenate is when you're combining these fields. Anyways, some languages use the ampersand. For whatever reason, VB just uses a good old plus sign as if it's arithmetic. And just kind of rinse and repeat. So this time we're saying format, time, and this time it will be hour, minute, minute. So again, when you're given a command, you're saying format, parentheses, because you have to say what you're formatting. You're formatting this function, a comma, and now you're telling it how you want it to be formatted. You want 2-digit hour, 2-digit minute. Again, because you don't want 9 to be 9, you want it to be 09. You don't want minute to be 7, you want it to be 07. So again, you have that consistent length of length for the field, for the value in the field, excuse me. Again, we'll save, close, save again, in case there's a procedural error. Go back to View, and now we'll do this again. So again, an actual form, you'd be filling in other data. This would be the last step. And now what happens is we go back and open the table, and now you can see, now it's numbers getting long, but again, it's giving you valuable information. You now have year, month, day, hour, and minute. So now if you only take one ticket per minute, this might be sufficient. So there's a few things you can do. You can go so far as to add second, and then you're really all set at that point. You also need to take into consideration that you may have multiple people using this database. Some people have, some businesses have asked me to come up with a database solution for, say, receiving. And one of the things that I mentioned to them is it one person accessing it or multiple people? Because it makes a difference. So if you want a unique case ID and multiple people are accessing it, two people could indeed potentially take it at the same time. And since ultimately we're trying to build audit information into the case ID, what you then do is you can say, like we mentioned earlier, put maybe the initials or some kind of agent identifier. So let's take a look at how that would look. So let's close that. Now we open that. View, Design View. And what we're going to do is we're going to put in a selector here, and it'll be, say, the initials of the agent. So we'll click on the button, and we'll just kind of drag this down, give us a little more space. Go up to the combo box, left click, drag. In this case, we will use the wizard, so I will type in the values that I want. Next. Give yourself a little space here. You can left click and drag this, because if you're putting in longer values here, if the whole value can't show up here, no matter how wide you make this, it still won't show. So give yourself a little extra space here. So maybe one agent is Jane Doe, so she just signs in with JD. Another one is maybe John Smith. Another one is maybe Michael Johnson. And we do next. We'll leave it like this. Remember the value for later use. Next. And then finish. Let's just give ourselves a little more space, because when you click on this, you really don't want to overlap the button. So we'll just click on this. In addition to dragging and dropping, you can just use the down arrow on your keyboard. That'll also move it. Same thing for this. As you can see, they both move the object as well as the label. And let's save that just to double check. So go to View, click on column 1. Sure enough, there are the initials. This lets you know that this field can be edited, so we're going to want to shut that off. So let's go to View, Design View. It's properly selected. And what we're going to do is for data, see how it says allow value list edits? I'm going to change that to no. We'll save this and we'll just bip right back just so you can see the change. See, the editor is gone now. All right, almost done. So make sure you have the button selected. Again, we've got more items here, more objects here, so we want to make sure we have the right one selected. Go to Event, on click, and now what we're going to do, again, plus sign to concatenate, and then what we want is me dot, because again, we're referencing a field that is on the form, and that should be, we only have one combo, so it's combo 4. I really should have checked, but I know it's the only combo box. Okay, so we save that, close that, save that, view. And so again, someone would fill out all their information, and let's choose JS, save and close, check the value. Sure enough, it concatenated or appended JS. Open it again. This time we'll do JD, save and close. Sure enough, there's JD. So I think that brings us to about the end of this lesson. Like I said, this was really just meant to be a one-shot, one-off kind of video to show you how you can make like a customizable auto-numbering field. Now, again, the first few numbers aren't changing because the year hasn't changed, the month hasn't changed, the day hasn't changed. The hour hasn't changed, but you can see the minute has indeed changed. And like I said, if it's a higher volume where you think that you would take more than one ticket or more than one transaction per minute, then you can go ahead and add seconds as well. All right, so I think that should just about do it. If you have any questions, just let me know, and I hope this was helpful.